Hello and welcome to episode 18 of the Wealth Amplifier podcast. I'm very excited today to be joined by Lauren Cohen. Hello, Lauren.
Hello.
So, Lauren Cohen is the Vice President of Global Partnerships at the MBA. So you may be wondering why on a traditional finance and investment podcast, we have the Vice President of Global Partnerships at the MBA on. And the reason is, for those that have been listening since the beginning, our goal with this podcast is to amplify a topic, an idea, or a person. In this case, we have a person, Lauren. And part of the idea when we first set out to do this podcast was that we, the folks at Amplius, have a pretty interesting personal and professional network of people that we talk to that have interesting careers, jobs, and perspectives, and we don't want to limit that to the finance industry. So, to that end, I compelled Lauren to appear, and how long have we known each other now? About 25 years?
Yeah, at least.
All right. So I've known Lauren for 25 years, and it's been really cool for me to know someone since they were a teenager and now see them as a big executive at one of the coolest organizations where I am a unquestioned fan, the MBA. So let's start there. Tell us about your multi-decade journey at the MBA, what you're doing now, and then I'll dive into some more fanboy-oriented questions.
Okay, great. Thanks, Matt. I'm so happy to be here. This is a very cool opportunity. So thank you for having me. So yeah, Matt and I, obviously we go way back from our days at Emory University in college. I was a soccer player my whole life, really into sports. My father was in business. So as I started to try to figure out what I wanted to do with my career, I decided that I was going to try to figure out how to be in the business of sports. So throughout Emory, I had a bunch of internships related to sports marketing. And ironically, our senior year, the NBA was coming to campus to recruit for, at the time, what was the NBA Associate Program, which was a program for college graduates. And it was a bit of a rotational program, but you were placed in a department for a year and then sometimes rotated out or hired in full time, depending on the needs. So I was fortunate enough to get an interview on campus, which was amazing. The interview process was long and arduous and a bit scary because I didn't get the offer till 2 days after graduation.
Oh, is that right?
I didn't know that. Hung tight. Yeah. So it started in November and it didn't finish till May, which was crazy. Things don't happen like that anymore for sure. But yeah, I started at the NBA July 6th, 2000. And I started with 21 other recent college graduates. So we were a bit of like a little sorority fraternity class at the NBA, and it was really fun. And, you know, throughout the first year, we had a bunch of professional development opportunities because we were sort of this incoming new crop of young professionals. And my first job at the MBA was working in retail marketing, which was a bit of a tangent, to be honest, because I had never worked at retail before. I didn't, understand the language around retail and all of that. But it was a really fun first year. I worked for a woman who had been at the MBA a long time. We developed a really good relationship. She became a mentor, a coach, a friend, obviously a colleague, and really helped kind of ingrain me in the culture there. And so from there, after my first year, I rotated out and I went to a group called Team Marketing and Business Operations, where I actually was responsible for launching what was back then the National Basketball Development League, which is today the NBA G League, but it was very different when I launched it. It was concentrated in the Southeast region of the United States. There was no linkage to NBA teams. We obviously called it the NBA DL. And that business model didn't work for too long, but it was nonetheless a really good experience. Worked on all things related to how you get basically a league and teams off the ground. So from ticket sales to PR to community service to game presentation to sponsorship, you name it, was kind of working on all those things. did that for a little less than a year and realized that that wasn't going to be my future at the NBA. Fortunately, was able to go back to my original boss who had hired me as an associate. And from there sort of springboarded me to a lot of different opportunities. I, kind of worked in retail and merchandising for the next, call it 8 years or so. Having been an athlete growing up, I was always enamored with like why big brands wanted to utilize sports and athletes to engage with consumers. So in the back of my head, I always knew I wanted to get into the world of sponsorship, but I wasn't sure if that was going to happen at the NBA or leaving the NBA. Fortunately, a phone call came about 10 years into my career, and it was an opportunity to move into the partnership team, which was super exciting. I was working on a team that worked across all of our global events and executing all of our partnership benefits.
That was around 2010, 2011, somewhere in there?
That was 2010.
Yeah.
And it was, really incredible experience. I traveled all over the world, got to see how, international fans felt about the NBA, which was obviously, huge fandom outside of the United States, which then led to an opportunity to move to London in 2012 for the NBA. Obviously, big year in London with the Olympics and sort of us establishing a bigger presence in Europe. Obviously, the influx of players and sort of the Euro League and the development of players there was really starting to take off. We had, big competition in the Olympics that year with Spain. So, working in London was basically like my study abroad.
Because you never went abroad when we were in college.
I never went abroad in college. I
didn't think you did. Yeah.
I was always sort of regretful of that, but it all kind of worked out in the end because I got to go as like an adult making money and travel. And I went to 14 countries and it was amazing. Really
fun.
I loved London. I was there like a little less than a year. So I did sort of the full year of events in Europe. Obviously got to kind of live out a dream of mine, which was to not only like go to the Olympics and, see what that was like, which I did get to go to the gold medal game, but I also was like working. We had a big event that launched during the Olympics that I was sort of, on the ground for, which was called NBA House, which is now sort of a living, breathing property that we have that goes on around the world internationally. So it was cool to kind of be part of the first one ever. It was a 10-day event, free event. We had a setup in Covent Garden, central London. Huge opportunity for the NBA just to like kind of educate fans who are all coming in from around the world on what our brand is all about, what our partners are all about. We had, VIP hospitality. At the time, our commissioner, David Stern, hosted a bunch of events, including, a pretty big breakfast with, at the time, the head of the English Premier League. So we did a lot of incredible things in London around the Olympics. And then I came back to New York after my year, and that led to in sort of international opportunity where my job every day was to wake up and think about how we were going to build our commercial business outside of the US. So I worked with a lot of our colleagues who were on the ground in places like China and South Africa and Brazil and Mexico and obviously Europe. And so from there, it was sort of, a 3-year stint of what we called at the time global integration, which was how do we, share best practices from the partnership team in New York with our folks in the regions? How do we develop events and programming and media opportunities that, we could apply in other parts of the world that we knew were working in the US. So it was really fun, really cool. And then that sort of led to more and more opportunities across managing global partners. So as I was working with our regional offices and our colleagues there, and we started to bring in more global partners within the global partnerships team. That's kind of where, my career path, I could probably go into more detail for like 3 hours, but we'll keep it short and sweet. So that's kind of where I am today. So today I manage a bunch of our global partners, who activate with us, not only in the US, but around the world. And it's super fun and exciting. We're constantly bringing in new new partnerships. We just announced our latest partner, which is a US only partner, but it's Jackson Family Wines, which is, Kendall Jackson is the Chardonnay, the number one Chardonnay. And then La Crema is for the W. But, we got huge buzz last week about the announcement, and it just, keeps things fresh and exciting for me. So it was a long-winded answer, but hopefully
no, that was great. That was great. I learned plenty, including I had no idea that you did not officially have the offer there until after graduation. Yes. I vaguely remember that the MBA process was longer and slower than let's say, the finance route where I was going or whatever. But that's really interesting. Now, the NBA, at least anecdotally, it seems to me, compared to the other professional sports leagues in the US, is much more global in nature. I mean, that is what I don't want to put you on the spot, but roughly what share of the NBA players are from outside the US now? Do you happen to know?
Oh, now it's close to 30%.
That's right. I was going to say close to a third. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. I mean, look, this is one of our, sort of biggest, not to get on the sales pitch side, but, one of our biggest things when we go out to brands is there's no other sports property in the world that has the best basketball players. We are the best. That's where everybody in the world wants to get to. Whereas with soccer, which is the number one sport in the world, you could maybe go play at Arsenal or Man City, or you might want to go play in La Liga in Spain. And
that's right.
So there's a bunch of different, you could go play for Paris Saint-Germain. There's different brands within the soccer world, or football if you're in other parts of the world, that, there's big opportunities to be superstars there. Whereas the NBA is the only place to be a superstar when it comes to basketball.
Exactly. That's, you didn't even have to sell it. I'm already sold.
I know.
As you know.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit. Let's dive a little bit deeper into the NBA. As an athlete and a sports fan, even though you're a very serious professional there, you're also probably a fan of the general product in the league. So what are some of just give us a couple of the cooler experiences or stories you've had in your 20 plus years at the NBA?
Yeah, I mean, I have seen a lot in my 20 plus years. I have participated in some magical moments. And there are really so many that, I would say are in my top 10. Obviously my first All-Star ever as an employee was in my hometown of Washington, D.C. in 2001. So that was super amazing to sort of come back home and see this huge event happen on my home turf.
Playing then in the same stadium they do now in the city, or were they somewhere else then?
No, they were in DC.
They were in DC. Okay.
Yeah. So, that was really fun. My family got to participate in some of the events that were happening, and, just to be able to, be a young 20-something-year-old and see that event come to life and know kind of all the places where it was happening was really, really cool. Fast forward to another All-Star in 2004, which was my first one in LA. I've now done 3 in LA. But that was a really special one just because the NBA at that point in time was, very not that we're not still today, but like the culture of our brand was so ingrained with hip hop and pop culture, and all the celebrities, the biggest celebrities in the world wanted to be part of the NBA AllStar Weekend in 2004. And, I was there for a week. Every night we had some big party where celebrities were coming. And, I had so many good stories coming out of that All-Star. I my best friends from college know this, but like I went to this really sick party that at the time Reebok had thrown, and I probably got home at like 4 a.m. And, I was so over the adrenaline was pumping in my body. I wrote an email to them recapping all the people and the celebrities that I had seen at this party. And to this day, I still have it. And I laugh because I was just so like, I can't believe this is my job. Like, this is the coolest thing ever. And, 2008, another big All-Star. We went to New Orleans right after Hurricane Katrina, and we had our first ever NBA All-Star Day of Service, where we literally went to the Ninth Ward and worked with Habitat for Humanity and built homes for people who had lost their homes. And that was a really special All-Star because it was really an opportunity for us to go and show that community who had been so gravely affected by Hurricane Katrina that we were there for them, that our players supported them, the league, the teams. So that was really cool. And honestly, there's so many more. I could go on and on. You know, in 2010, we went and played All-Star in what is now, what was then Cowboy Stadium. Now it's AT&T Stadium. So we had 110,000 people attend NBA
At a basketball game?
A basketball game inside a football stadium. It was wild. It was absolutely wild. And then in 2011, we went back to LA, and that was my first All-Star working in partnerships. So that was a huge one because I had a ton going on with all of our partners, but the biggest event I worked on was at the time, we called it the T-Mobile Magenta Carpet. And we set up a tent in LA Live, which is, this complex that's across from what was then Staples Center, or now Crypto.com Arena. And we had basically like a red carpet show that, Turner broadcast. And we had all these celebrities and all the All-Stars walked the magenta carpet on Sunday. And it was so unbelievable. We had Bruno Mars perform there, who Bruno wasn't Bruno then. He was kind of this up and coming star. And that event was, I worked my butt off for that event, but it was incredible and got so much, PR and accolades about how, the NBA put on this really almost like an Academy Awards type red carpet event, which was really cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So before we dive to the back part of the podcast, I do have to have a personal moment here.
Okay.
I've been very patient, and it's been now 23 years since the Philadelphia 76ers have been out of the second round of the playoffs. And there've been a lot of near misses. It's not like they haven't been in the playoffs. When you think about your role at the league, what more can you do for me to bring a parade to Broad Street in Philadelphia?
Oh, man. That's a really, Philly's been, really heads down on, as we know, trusting the process.
I'm a process truster myself.
Yep. So, as I will tell most hardcore fans of any team, your time will come. I can't predict when, and I wish I could, because I have some family members who wish I could for other teams.
I'm familiar.
Yep. But I think, there's a lot of amazing basketball czars in that city who know what they're doing. And I think at some point, your time will come.
Skillfully handled. So let's shift to, because we do have a number of people that listen to these podcasts, some of whom are on the younger side and some of whom have parents with, let's say, kids that are back where you and I were when we first met in college, thinking about career and so on. Mm-hmm. But one thing that's particularly rare about you is you've been at the same company since you left, since we left college together, a long time ago. So what's your secret? How do you stay at the same place for that long?
Old.
We're getting there, but
I don't know if there's any secret. I think a few things have kept me where I am that I tell a lot of young people. I am somebody who needs differentiation. So every single day that I have woken up and gone to the NBA office, my day is different. No 2 days are ever the same. I have been fortunate that I have twisted and turned in my career there. I've definitely been at the same company for almost 24 years, but I haven't done the same job.
Right. You've had many jobs.
I've had many jobs. I am always seeking out ways to bring newness and freshness to my role. I'm always seeking out ways to challenge myself. I am not somebody who likes to be bored and just sit around and do the same thing, or, be in the same meetings all the time. I need that motivation and ability to kind of bring in newness and freshness to my day-to-day job. I work with amazing people. I think, if you talk to anybody at the NBA, we have some of the smartest business and sports minds in the world. A lot of both senior people who I have worked with and maybe left or still work with today, that I look up to. And what's amazing about the sports industry, and once you do kind of get into it, it's really small. So, I always tell people that, yes, the world in itself is 6 degrees of separation, but the sports industry is like 2 or 3. So, it's a really, small collective, so to speak. And, you do find a lot of people who support one another, which is great. I have just always been someone who, like, I'm social. I talk about what I do. I talk about what I want to do. And so that leads to things sort of like coming to my plate and saying, oh, can you help with this? Or would you be interested in this? And so I think, having a voice and talking about what you want to do and getting yourself involved in different things is super important in the, sort of corporate world.
That was great. You actually already answered my next question, was if you, given that you work at the pinnacle sort of both sports and marketing, what advice you would give to, let's say, aspiring people that want to get into sports marketing. But you already, unless you have anything to add on that one, I think you already addressed it.
Yeah. I mean, the only other thing I would say, and I repeat this often, I get calls about, hey, can you connect with this young person? And I am always willing to do it. And then I have those conversations. And at the end of those conversations, I say, look, now you have my number, you have my email, like you can reach out to me. You can, ask me for advice. You can ask me if I know people at companies, but it's on you to sort of take control of your own destiny. And, I have had people who have stuck with me for years, some of whom have actually gotten jobs at the NBA because of just the timing and when they reached out and, oh, you should, check out this opportunity. And I am always like amazed at the people who take me up on that offer and amazed at the people who don't take me up on that offer. So, I would just say that, like, if you are getting that opportunity to talk to somebody in the sports world who, obviously has been around the block for a while, don't lose touch with them. Like, keep in touch, and timing is everything, and make sure you're being persistent in a respectful way, that kind of keeps your name in the mix.
Good advice. Well, we try to be reliable on the podcast by keeping the episodes in the 20 to 25 minute range. So we're right there now.
Okay.
But in conclusion,
that went fast.
Look, I could keep you on here for hours talking about various things. So, but I
definitely could.
I know you have a flight to catch. So,
I do. Thank you.
What we always conclude with on the podcast is we ask our guests if there is a charity, a nonprofit, a cause, anything that they'd like to amplify, that means a lot to you and resonates with you.
Yes, I appreciate that. And I love that you guys do this. And I obviously was thinking about it last night, talking about it with my husband. And I was like, there's just like a bunch of different ways I could go here. But where I landed, and I'll explain a little bit, is the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum, for a few reasons. Number one, my grandmother was a Holocaust survivor, my mom's mother. She was in Auschwitz. And just a quick little story, after the war broke out in Israel, I was already scheduled to go to a United States Holocaust Memorial Museum event in New York City at Cipriani. And at the time, there was a lot of talk. I had kept my kids home from school one day. They go to a Jewish nursery school. A lot of talk of like, should we go? Is it safe? Yada, yada. And I went to this event with a bunch of my coworkers who are also Jewish, and it was incredible. It was incredible to be in a room with 500 plus people supporting this incredible institution. And it made me want to be a voice for them, because it is so important for us to continue to support the stories from the Holocaust. Obviously, given the rise of anti-Semitism going on in the world. So, for anyone who doesn't know about the museum in DC, it's an incredible place. I've been there a few times.
Yes,
For those of you that do, I encourage you all to continue to support that institution. It needs our help. It needs to, continue to operate and run for future generations to be able to know kind of what, went on, obviously, and to continue to combat the rise of anti-Semitism. So that's my spot.
That is great. I didn't know that's where you were going to go, and I'm really glad that you did. So that's great. And thank you so much for joining us on the Wealth Amplifier.
Thank you, Matt.
Next episode, yes, no, and
we'll have to do a part 2 at some point.
We will. Okay. After the Sixers parade. You can we can do it live on site.
Deal.
And what the next episode will be in a couple of weeks, and it will be with the far less interesting Matt Liebman, Aaron Marks, and Pat Swift. Talking about finance things. But Lauren, thanks for joining us, and we'll have you back again.
Thank you.